Hello, my name is Zach Ryvan, Sliders with Old Man Gaming, and you have decided to tune into another horrible gaming review. Before we get started on today's game, as usual, we have some disclaimers. Disclaimer number one, I do not give scored reviews. I don't believe in them for video games. I think it's one of the most subjective forms of art, so therefore I will give you an overview of the game. I'll give you its pros and cons from my opinion, as all reviews are, and I will tell you whether or not I am going to personally be sticking with it after the purposes of this review. Disclaimer number two, I don't get as much time with these games as other people do. That's why it's called a horrible review. I get sometimes only a handful of hours. I am a house dad, and I do a lot of work, so I can't go as in-depth as some people who can do an in-depth review could. So keep that in mind. If you want something more in-depth, you're going to have to look somewhere else. And then one last special disclaimer. This is going to go long. I like to keep mine between 10 and 15 minutes. Sometimes I do go long on accident, but this one is definitely going to go long. The reason is I never got to review State of Decay 2 in its original form. So, what I am reviewing today is State of Decay 2 Juggernaut Edition, the hyper updated version of the game post Microsoft buyout. So, the reason is that this is going to go long is basically I'm going to have to review and look at two different games for you today. State of Decay 2 in its original form, and then State of Decay 2 Juggernaut Edition as per the improvements that they've made. Then give you pros and cons on the as a whole. So this is truly going to be a very tricky thing. So let's get it started. What is State of Decay 2? State of Decay 2 is a game where you live out your personal zombie apocalypse fantasy. It's played from the third-person perspective, but you don't play one character. You get three procedurally generated characters. These characters make up your starting group. You can play through an original tutorial mode, which kind of shows you the ropes before getting to the first map, or you can just skip right to the first map. Basically, the idea behind it being that you're trying to cultivate and create a new community with these procedurally generated survivors. As you run around the maps and you scavenge certain places, you scavenge for materials and ammo and food, you have to manage those resources back at your home base. In addition to that, you can find survivors out in the world and you can decide whether to recruit them to your group or not to. You can decide whether to exile troublemakers or not. You will also meet other groups of survivors that could potentially be hostile, could potentially not be. The entire time combating hordes and hordes of zombies all across the map in order to do all these things. Through the course of this, your characters will gain influence, which allows them to not really level up, but become more revered within the society you're creating. Once you get them to hero stance, you can pick a leader for your group, which is a really interesting way of doing things because once you pick a leader, that defines the end game of your game. So if there's 4 archetypes, warlord, sheriff, builder, trader, whichever your character is that you pick to be the leader, that will set in motion the series of missions to actually beat that playthrough, only after you've destroyed the 10 plague hearts that are constantly producing zombies in your area. Now, the original game released with 3 different maps. You could not pick the map you went to. It was a randomly selected thing each time you played, with, I believe, an inability to get the one that you had already played on. One of the coolest things about this is once you survive that playthrough, any characters in your community that survived could then be selected to start the next community up to 3, which gave it really this really interesting kind of legacy feel to it, almost like some of the survivors over here are going to build a new society over here to kind of slowly repopulate the world, and I really liked that. It felt like the game was just constantly going. The game, however, was of course an indie game, and it was riddled with bugs. riddled with bugs that it got quite a bit of flack for. In addition to that, it only had the 3 maps, which the 3 maps were big. There was a lot to do on them, but it does get a little bit boring going through the 3 of them. Plus, you couldn't actually pick them, so you could continually get the same map over and over again if you were restarting communities, and that was a little frustrating as well. They've also struggled with balancing. In the beginning, it was criticized for being too easy. There weren't enough zombies, there weren't enough special zombies, you didn't get attacked enough, so they kind of went overboard with the response, and then you got tons of zombies, which made it very hard to do anything. So they had serious balancing issues. However, if you're going to ask me where the original game truly stumbled, it was in their DLCs. Their first DLC was a weapons and equipment pack that was themed like Independence Day, which is just silly to me. I don't want more fireworks and guns that have the American flag on them. Like, I want content. I want maps, or I don't know, stuff like that. Then their second content upgrade was this thing called Daybreak Pack, which Daybreak was a mode that you would play outside of the original mode, and it was multiplayer only, and it was a horde mode, which to me is so anti what the game was to begin with that I didn't quite understand what they were doing here. Then, to add even worse to that, the third DLC pack, again, this one did give you a new map, but it gave you a sequel game to the original game that was more of a linear-based story, using the same mechanics, but you had to play the same characters. You didn't get the procedurally generated stuff. You also couldn't take your survivors into that map. It was just that story, which, again, to me, the fun of this game was you got a playground, you got to play in it, and you got to kind of define your story the way you wanted to, and you just couldn't do that with this. And then the game kind of went dark for some time. There was small content upgrades that centered around clothing options, and really there just wasn't a lot to do in it. Even the people who played this game often, such as A Squad, they stopped playing it because there wasn't anything new to do in the game. Everything had been done, so everybody was kind of moving on. With that said, enter the Juggernaut Edition. So, what's the Juggernaut Edition? Well, the reason they went dark is they took the money from the Microsoft buyout. They are now a first-party studio, and they just poured it into this game. They redid the UI, they redid the control scheme, they tried to get rid of the bugs. In addition to that, they reworked some of the graphical stuff is way better. They also reworked the sound quality. They definitely recorded some new lines for the characters in the game to say. They made that flow a little bit better with the conversations between characters. No longer do they get kind of randomly cut off. In addition to that, they made all the original DLCs, the ones that I didn't like, but all of them free. So you can play Daybreak, whatever, with the Juggernaut Edition, which is also free with Games Pass. You just get the free upgraded content, which is another really nice thing. In addition to that, they gave the people what they finally wanted, which was a new map, Providence Ridge, a whole new map to play on. It's not quite as big as the other ones, which we'll talk about in a second, but it is a new map to play on. And with it, they also reworked the opening game content, the tutorial stuff, especially when you get to the map itself. It's a little bit more explanatory as to what you should be doing. So, what I'm trying to get at is this game has just been overhauled from the ground up. Is it a completely new game? No. Does it give tons of new content? Not really, especially not if you were able to play the stuff before. However, is this a smoother, more consistent, more interesting way to play it? Yes. Is this a better experience all the way around? Yes. They've done so many different improvements. There's so many fan improvements. They've really listened to the people out there, and they've kind of given them what they want with this edition. So with that, let's go to pros and cons. So that's the overview of the two back and forth, like what was there originally, what has kind of been improved, give or take. So let's go into the pros of it as a whole. Okay, and it's hard to look at these pros and cons without looking at how the game was originally and how the game is now. So that being said, I'm going to try and look at this as if it was just like a new game. You out there are playing it for the first time. It's going to be difficult. I'm probably going to fail at it, but this is a horrible review, so what do you expect? Alright. Alright, so the first pro is the openness and replayability of this game is off the charts. Every time you play, you get different characters. Even though the maps, there's only 4, there are different bases that you can inhabit in them, different play styles for the entire group that you can come up with and try different things each time, see what works, see what doesn't. There's nothing like getting attached to a character in your head and then watching that character die. And just so you know, all the characters have permadeath in this game. So if they get ripped apart by a Juggernaut, they are dead, period, forever. They never come back. There's just something beautiful about the way this game lets you create a story from the ground up. Especially if you have an imagination. Before you know it, you're perceiving relationships between these characters, perceiving who doesn't like each other. And this Juggernaut edition has made that even better than the original. I just promised I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. One thing about the original that they used to do that was really irritating is characters' dialogue could get cut off by other characters just talking or other events just randomly happening in the world. It was like the algorithm of the game kind of tripped over itself a lot. That has all been smoothed out. I never once felt like I was missing a conversation, and when the conversations got interrupted by zombie attacks or whatever, they would come back to it and speak again. Even if I interrupted by talking to an NPC, they would still come back and say their words. It really makes you feel more attached to these characters than ever before, which was really nice. My next pro, custom button mapping. Absolutely the best way to go. Didn't have it in the original. It was very frustrating to try and figure out how to do certain things. In the original, your stealth button was the same as your dodge button. Like if you held it, it was stealth. If you tapped it, it was dodge, which is insane. If you can think of all the easily ways you can screw up by trying to hide and instead dancing to your right. Yeah, that being said, they have made it so that you can custom button map. In addition to the custom button map, the baseline control setup is way better. It involves, they redid it so that stealth doubling button isn't there. Just all the way around, it's nice. However, we are going to come back to the control scheme and the cons. Look out for that. The next pro is a direct comparison pro. Again, promised I wouldn't do this, but it's a horrible review. You can select now directly which map you want to go to. If you decide to go through the tutorial, it immediately takes you to the new map, because the new map, the opening of it is kind of engineered for those new kind of almost tutorial missions. But if you skip the tutorial, you could just select any four of the maps you want. There is still a choice for random to just get whatever map randomly chosen by the computer. Can't tell you how nice that is. There are some maps that I don't like to play in, and I hate when I get them. Or maps that I've played more than the others because of the RNG, and I'd like to explore a different one. I haven't been able to do that before. This is awesome. This is a great quality of life improvement on this game. Last pro is all-encompassing. Quality of life. They have made so many quality of life improvements to this game. Aside from just the graphics, aside from just the communication stuff that I was talking about earlier, they've added little, simple features that were taken for granted before. Such as, when you're out looking for materials or food, you find these things called rucksacks, which are big, just like donations of supplies. You can only carry one rucksack at a time. You can also have one of your other people following you at a time. You can't actually, before, you couldn't just hand your rucksack to them for them to hold. You would have to switch to them, have them pick up the rucksack. You would have to drop your rucksack, switch to them, have them pick up the rucksack, then switch back to play the original character. Super frustrating, super irritating. Now you can just literally talk to them. There's a selection, give rucksack, you hand the rucksack to them, you can talk to them, take rucksack back. It's very simple. Stuff like that is just everywhere in this. The UI has been made cleaner, the map screen has been made cleaner, the community screen has been made cleaner. Everything has just been streamlined to play better. And I'm not gonna lie to you folks, I wish the game had been released like this. I wish this was the version we had gotten 2 years ago. I think if this came out today, you would be looking at an 8 or a 9 out of 10. Instead, you got a 7, 6.5, whatever, back in the day. Okay, so we got to switch over. We got to do our due diligence, go into cons. Alright, con number 1. Revenge of the Bugs. This company just, no matter what they do, they seem to always miss something. While this game, they fixed seemingly all of the original bugs, there are these crazy, weird bugs that have just showed up in this one. Like one where zombies will just like beam in from when they're being generated when you see them on the map, but instead of like just seeing them in the spot, you actually see them slide into the frame from off camera, from the right or the left. There's another big bug. This is the control scheme bug that I was going to talk about earlier, where if you go into the game for the first time, for whatever reason, your controls are completely messed up. Like, I highly recommend going into the custom controls and just saying set it to default, because if you do, it'll switch it back. When I first started playing, there were actions that weren't mapped to a button key. There was the stealth button had also been mapped to my flashlight, so the only way I could turn on my flashlight was go into stealth and vice versa. And I was about to ding the game for their new control scheme when I realized that the custom controls, like, you could remap it, and that they were all just automatically messed up because of this bug. Now, I don't know if this bug is you played it before and that's what happened when they switched over. There's a conflict and people coming to it new wouldn't have that. I'm not sure how this bug got triggered in my game, but it was there and it was super irritating. It made it very hard for me to play for the first hour until I figured out that I could just map it any way I wanted, and then I was very happy with it. But again, just starting right off the bat, that bug just got in. It's got to be a bug because there's no way they meant the control schemes to be like that. Alright, my next con is a little nitpicky. Some people out there might be a little upset with this one, but I think there's a few missed opportunities with this one. I'm a little bummed that Providence Ridge is as small as it is and as windy roady as it is. It's a mountain town, so things are not very accessible, and I feel like the map is intentionally designed to be kind of very vertically based so that they could make it smaller. But it would still take you a long time to get to places, so it kind of like counterbalances the bigger maps from the original game. That being said, it's still a little bit small. There's not as many bases on the map. They're a little bit more clearly defined, so it's not as cool to look for them. So that's a little bit irritating. I almost felt like the map, while it is cool to get a completely new map, I'm not saying it isn't, I felt like the map is like a starter map, engineered a little bit more for that tutorial, for those new tutorial missions, to prepare you for the other 3 maps, which the other 3 maps I've played before. I don't really need to play them again. So that was a little irritating on my part. I also feel like a real easy content switch to this would be to add some character archetypes to the procedurally generated characters. Instead of just having the 4 original ones, Sheriff, Warlord, Builder, Trader, I feel like a real easy content update would be to make another one of those to kind of like get fed into the mix. And of course this would mean new endgame missions, but I think if you've got everybody going into the recording studio to record new sound bites already, why not just do that then? So I felt like that was a little bit of a missed opportunity, so I'm going to ding them on the con just a tad. Nitpicky, I know, but I felt like I gotta say something. So that brings us to the close. Whether or not I'm gonna stick with it, definitely. With all its bugs, with all of its flaws, there's something truly unique about this game, and I urge anybody to try it and to not be able to say that, even if it's not your bag, even if it's a game that you don't like afterwards, and you're like, I'm never going back to that. I would find it hard to believe that if you're a reasonable person, you wouldn't be like, you know what though, they're trying to do something different, and I appreciate that. And that's something that just keeps me coming back. I've come back to this game repeatedly over the years, even without the good DLC, even with all the cons and the bugs. I still keep coming back to it because I can visit these characters that are inherently mine. They're nobody else's. They only exist on my save datas. They only exist on my console and in my game, nobody else's. There's just something so wonderful about that to me, that like these characters are inexplicably connected to me just because they were generated to me, and I love that. I love that about this game. I love that playground aspect to it. So with that said, I'm going to keep coming back to it. I'm definitely going to play Providence Ridge out and see where it is. Like I said, I think it could have been bigger and a little bit more to it, but, I have no right to insult these designers or whatever. But so yeah, so I will stick with it. I will keep coming back to it. Is this game for everybody? No. Is this game perfect? No, it's not. Is it way better than it was? Yes. Does that excuse it not being perfect right now? I don't know. I think there is kind of a weird feel to this, in the fact that I feel like if somebody was coming into it first time, they'd think it was really good, but they would also notice the bugs and be like, I don't know about this one. Whereas if you were somebody who played it before and you're playing it now, you're going to think it's just the best game ever because of these improvements. And it kind of creates that weird bias where you've seen how bad it was, now it's good, and you're like, oh, this good is so much better. So I don't know. I guess I'm kind of rambling now, so I'm going to go ahead and end this. It's been a hard 4 days to try and get this review out. I hope I did good for you guys. Just a couple of last-minute disclaimers. I did only get a few hours with the actual Juggernaut edition, just because it came out late on Friday. It didn't come out until 3 p.m. I was kind of upset about that, and I just didn't get as much time over the weekend to play it as I would have liked. So I only got, like 6 or 7 hours in it. And I did not actually get through my first playthrough on Providence Ridge, so there might be some more cool stuff that I'm missing. But I just wanted to say that up front. And for Games Pass, it's completely free. All the upgrades are free, and that's really cool. So go check that out. And as usual, check out everything Old Man Gaming has to offer. We do reviews every Monday, as well as a show every day of some sort, whether it be a Let's Play or a podcast or a review or something else. And then check us out on Facebook at Old Man Gaming DH, Twitter at Old Man Gaming 9, and then join our Discord. It's in the there's a link in the description below. And as usual, if you guys keep watching and listening to them, I'll keep making them. Thank you to everybody out there. You guys give Old Man a chance to do something he loves. See you next week.